My name is Mike Gaines, obviously. I've been working in visual effects and post-production I moved out. I graduated college in 2004, and then moved right out to Los Angeles. And didn't get started in post-production right away. Kind of fell into it in a kind of a weird way, but been doing visual effects and post-production for over 15 years now. And I've been on a lot of different sides of the whole of all of post-production. I started out as a post-production, just a post PA, just going and getting coffee and lunch and dinner and things for people. Had an amazing experience there. Not something that I ever thought I would want to do with my life. Ironically, I wanted to be on set. That was like my big thing. Like, well, on set is where all the action happens. That's where literally they say action. That's where like the actors are and the director and everything like that. So I just wanted to be on set when I moved out to LA. And then after a couple of months, my parents were like, "You need to find a real job." After me, trying to do crazy things, and I got a job in a post production office, and I took it reluctantly because even though I liked post production, I liked editing and that sort of thing, I couldn't see myself in as a career sitting in a dark room all day and like going frame by frame by frame on something. It to me that sounded like the most boring thing ever. But ironically, I that's what I do. I sit in a dark room all day long and I love it. So I started in post-production and moved my way up to a post-production coordinator. And I did that for an NBC show. After that, I kind of moved. I did some graphics work for that show. The show was called Kidnapped on NBC, which I know nobody has seen. That's why it only lasted for like half a season. But I did some graphics work for the show, and I actually created the main title that aired on the first episode. And so I was kind of dabbling in this kind of visual effects stuff while I was doing kind of the post coordinator role and organizing things, and decided that maybe I'll kind of pursue that and see where that gets me. So I kind of started to do more freelance work and graphic design work, and then I started working on a movie as a post production assistant. Basically, I knew an editor from a previous show, and from there I started working on this movie. It was called Never Back Down, which I don't know if anybody's seen. Actually, whenever I say that I teach visual effects, and whenever I say that to my students, there's one person that like sticks their hand up and is like, "I know that." Yeah, see, there you go. Never Back Down. So I worked on Never Back Down as a post production assistant, but then the director knew that I did this kind of graphic design work, and he came into my office one day and he's like, "I've got this shot where it's a locked off shot. We put it on a tripod, and I want to make it look like it's handheld, kind of a little bit shaky. Is that something you could do just for our like temporary, our like director's cut?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." So I fired up After Effects on my computer and was like, "Okay, let's see, how do I do this?" And okay, there's like a wiggle function. And I was just I didn't know what I was doing, and slowly figured out how to make it work. And then I showed the director, and he's like, "Whoa, that's amazing. Okay, I've got this other shot where this kid is like hitting a tennis ball up against a wall. And well, the kid's not really good at tennis, so he's not really hitting a tennis ball. He's just kind of doing this with his hands. And so we need to add the tennis ball. Can you kind of just a temporary thing? Can you add the tennis ball?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I mean, I made the camera wiggle, so I can do the tennis ball. So I did the tennis ball. I animated a little tennis ball back and forth. And the director was like, "Oh, that's amazing." And then he said, "I've got this other shot where we start on a web page of a video, and then we pull out and we keep pulling back out, and we go through the screen of a phone, and then we see that the video is playing on a phone over somebody's shoulder, and then they walk around and it's still playing. Can you do something like that?" And I'm like, "I mean, come on, did you see what I did with the tennis ball? I could totally do that." And then I went back into my room and was like, oh crap, I have no idea what I'm doing. So this was kind of right at the beginning of YouTube tutorials. There was barely anything around, so I looked at as much stuff as I could and spent a couple of days trying to make this thing work, and showed the director, and he loved it. And he's like, that's amazing. I've got this shot. I've got this shot. So I ended up doing all of the visual effects on that movie that didn't involve any 3D CG work. So I did all of the 2D work on the movie, and I was just hired as a production assistant right from the very beginning, just to be on the show for like two weeks, I think was what I was originally there for. And I went through the entire run of the movie, and my name was in the credits along with like my company name. So once I did that, I realized that there was kind of a niche of visual effects work that is not very complicated or not very complex, that is usually something that a bigger studio overcharges for. A bigger visual effects studio charges a lot of money to do, even though it doesn't actually take a lot of man hours. They use those things, those like simpler shots, like just erasing a boom mic in the corner or whatever it is. They use that to try to make up their overhead in other and for their other shots. They're big shots that they kind of bid out, and it's like, well, it's going to cost us $1 million to do this shot, and in fact, it actually cost them 2 million. They've got to make up that number somehow. So I figured that there was probably a niche market where, for me, just me with my laptop, I could probably do a lot of this work for a lot cheaper than other people are doing, all the big visual effects studios. So that's how I kind of started my career. And and I worked, I just kind of reached out to all of my contacts that I had in post-production and all the shows and movies that I worked on. And that kind of got my career going. In the meantime, I jumped from working freelance, and I started working at Sony Pictures Television. They make TV shows, not just actual TVs and cameras. They make the actual TV shows. I worked on like Breaking Bad and things like that for Sony Pictures, and I was a visual effects producer for that. So I wasn't an artist there. I was actually overseeing about a dozen artists at that point. Then the Sony hack happened. I don't know if anybody remembers the Sony hack. Yeah, it was. I was there. I walked in one morning, and there were post-it notes everywhere saying "Don't turn on the computers." And from that point on, our lives completely changed, like forever, in that department, because we were reliant on our computers and the internet and everything. And the Sony hack pretty much brought down our entire network. And once that happened, there was a lot of changes internally, and I decided to try to go back to my freelance world to kind of get back into visual effects. And then I started working and started creating this company that I have now. And that's when I met Brenda for like New Girl and Speechless, I think, and Doogie, right?
Oh yes, remember
Drip Flip.
episode? Yep, Drip Flip. I am always impressed with Mike Gaines. Always, he does great work, and we've peaks and valleys on on our project. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, there are. I mean, that is one thing that I would say is the hardest part of working on any show, is that I mean, I love working on all the shows, but then you get into especially the really creative stuff, and that was the drip flip. Was that what it was? Yeah, drip flip. That was one of those things where there were so many. I mean, the lot of creative decisions had to be made, and so there was a lot of changes and it just kind of, it was a grind, but it looked good in the end, for sure. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started with what I'm doing, and right now I'm working on TV shows. Once we had the strike last year, that kind of set things set everything on fire, basically. And I started working on some commercials, did some Google commercials, and some other kind of corporate commercials. So I'm still doing a little bit of that. A Jersey Mike's commercial, the sandwiches with Danny DeVito. That was pretty cool. But right now I'm working on Only Murders in the Building, season 4, which I worked on season 2 and 3 as well, which is an amazing show if you've never seen it, for Hulu, and also working on a Netflix show and a Disney Channel show. So there's a lot of little things in the fire there that are still kind of, even though things are slowed down a little bit because of the strike and just the way that things have kind of contracted a little bit. There's still work to be found, luckily. So been keeping busy.
I have a question, Mike. Did you
Hmm?
know other VFX people before you got into it?
That's a great question. Let me think about that. I really didn't. I had worked with, at that point, I had worked with visual effects companies. And so I knew, I kind of knew how the visual effects studio system worked. And having kind of navigated that world through the different shows that I'd worked on. But as far as learning visual effects, it was not something, nobody taught me how to do it. I learned on YouTube, basically, of how to do all of it. And I didn't have like a mentor when it came to visual effects. It was really I kind of jumped into it and figured it out as I went along, which actually is still kind of the case. I mean, I'll get somebody will ask me to do something. I'm like, I've never done that before. And then all of a sudden now I'm the premier guy on Disney Channel to make like dogs and cows talk. And that's a weird thing that I've kind of walked into. So no, I didn't really have many connections to the visual effects world when I jumped into it. Just kind of had to figure it out.
Because originally when you came out to Los Angeles, what did you want to do?
I wanted to be on set. That was my
Mhm.
thing. I wanted to be in production specifically. And I wanted to go kind of the directing route, directing or camera operating. I loved camera operating. And that was kind of what I was trying to get into. And it was actually a lot harder to find a job because there were so many people that came out to LA to want to do just that. So there was a lot of competition for just even a PA job on a TV show or a movie. So it was really difficult. And then I love to edit and do that sort of thing. So I had that as not a backup, but it was something that I was still interested in, but I didn't really see myself as like, this is what I want to pursue as a career. And I kind of fell into it.
Tripped and fell. Yes, Larry. Go ahead.
So what did you study in college before going out to LA?
Yeah, it was just film school. I went to Boston University, and they had a film and TV program there. This was back in the early 2000s, so things were a little different than they are today. I think that as far as like I was learning more of kind of the foundations of filmmaking, and really, you got hands-on with like actual film cameras. Back then, there was barely any digital filmmaking at all. And when it came to like learning how to edit and that sort of thing, I mean, I literally learned how to splice together film in my first class. So that was the type of classes I was taking. Now I think that a lot of universities are offering a lot more specialized stuff because the technology is a lot more accessible, and it's a lot easier to anybody with a laptop can basically do what I do or learn how to do what I do. So it's a little bit different. So when I went to college, it was mainly just learning like screenwriting, directing. I think I took an editing class, very basic kind of fundamentals of filmmaking, not very specific to visual effects. Visual effects back in like the early 2000s was something that I was like, this is really cool, but wow, I have no, like, this is such magic that I have no idea how you can even begin to learn how to do it, because you just need all this like really expensive equipment. And back then it was still kind of a state of the art. And nowadays, you've got your phone and you can pretty much do a lot with your phone or your iPad or your laptop, and it's a lot more accessible. So I kind of learned as I went along.
So when you're editing, what does that look like? Like, do you have a lot of creative liberty with it, or is it more for the creator's vision?
Can you say that, or Brenda, can you repeat that? Because I can barely
So
hear it.
when you're doing your VFX editing, how much creative control do you have? Or are you supporting the vision of the showrunner, right? I mean, in television, for the sake of
Right.
saying.
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends. Sometimes I will be given well, there are two sides to kind of the work that I do. One side is it's basically kind of like it's like a body shop for your car. You bring in your car and you're like, the engine light came on. I don't know why. Can you fix it? And I'm like, yep. Or there's a dent in here. Can you just get rid of that dent? I'm like, yep, done, boom. So creatively, there's not a whole lot to do there. It's like either the dent is there or the dent is not there. But there's the other side of things where I'll be given just a blank screen or somebody's holding a phone, and the note I get is they're texting with their brother, and this is what the text messages should say. And then maybe I'll get like a temporary reference that the assistant editor is kind of put together just to get the timing right. But it's up to me to figure out what it looks like, what the animation looks like, all of those things. So at that point, it's a very creative process, and it's kind of I kind of give it a good first pass, and then the producers will let me know what they like, what they don't like, change the color of this, make the shoes bigger, more shoes on the page, less shoes with drip lip. But it all depends. Sometimes I'm given every single, especially sometimes with like text message stuff. I worked on a lot of Apple TV shows, and they have a very, very, very specific way that their stuff looks. Obviously, they want to protect all of their phone and their intellectual property. So whenever I have to create a screen that is on a laptop that's a MacBook or something for an Apple TV show, I have no creative control over that. It is literally, here are the assets, and it has to look exactly like this. If not, we will let you know, and we'll make you move that one little icon over 2 pixels because that's the way we intended it to. So it just depends. There's a lot of creativity in a lot of different ways, but sometimes when it just comes to like, I got to get rid of a pimple on some kid's face, I just got to get rid of that pimple. And there's not many creative ways to do that other than put a bigger pimple there, I guess. Good question, though.
So what does your day-to-day look like? I know you said you're working on multiple projects right now. How do you balance the surplus of different projects at one given time?
Yeah, great question. I think that the biggest challenge I have is managing time and managing the flow of work, especially with episodic television, especially for network TV, basically television that kind of airs week to week. So like, every Thursday night, this one show airs, whatever that means now. It's on Hulu, whatever. I doubt anybody tunes in at like Thursday at 7 p.m. to watch their favorite show anymore. But anyway, those shows come out week by week, and there's a lot more of the deadlines are a lot harder for those things, because literally it's like, we got to get this to the show to the network. So we need the visual effects at this specific time. So I'll have a really hard deadline for those types of things. For shows that air or broadcast or stream or whatever on Netflix or anything that shows them all at once, there is usually, I will work on a show for months and bounce around to different episodes throughout the process. They will have different delivery dates for each one of those, each of those shows. But since everything has to be kind of done all at once, the schedule is a little bit more, it's like amorphous. There's no hard schedule to that. So when I'm working on different projects, like right now I'm working on a Netflix show that I finished episode 10, and we're going back to episode 2 to finish something. That's a type of show that the deadlines aren't very hard. There are deadlines, but they're a little bit more squishy. On the NBC show that I'm working on, the deadlines are like, we need this next Friday or it doesn't get into the show. So using all of that, I kind of try to figure out how to prioritize. Well, I need to make sure I get all of these shots done for NBC because they really need it. Then I can work on the Netflix stuff. So it's kind of it's a big juggling act. It's actually a pretty big challenge, especially when I don't like to turn down a lot of work, and that's kind of bitten me in the butt a couple times because all of a sudden I'll have like 7 shows going all at once, and I'm trying to juggle everything. It's really just about organizing all of my information. I have a big spreadsheet. I use a Airtable, which is an amazing. It's kind of like Google Sheets on steroids. But I put everything in that spreadsheet with all my due dates. And every day I'm looking to see what is the priority, and I can kind of then go through and check everything off. Because if I didn't do that, I would forget. I'd forget what I was working on, literally, like what I needed to do. So, and then once it comes to like, then I'll get client notes. Notes will come in about certain shots. Then those will take priority over other things and new shots. So it's a little bit of a kind of a juggling act that I don't. It's a big challenge for me, and I think it's a big challenge for a lot of people. But something that you kind of learn how the flow as things kind of get crazy.
I have a question.
Yeah,
When you were just starting up your freelance business, how did you get clients? Was it more word of mouth, or how did you find projects to work?
Yeah, it's basically been all word of mouth. The post-production world is even though there's a lot of shows and movies going on, it is I would say that once you're in that network and community, it's a fairly tight-knit group of people. And when I work for certain studios, for example, when I started working like on New Girl and Modern Family and This Is Us, those shows, those were all through the same studio. So those were all 20th Century Fox shows. And I have a good relationship with the executives and the post-production executives at that studio. And because producers work basically kind of go from one show to the next, and they all kind of work together. As one show ends, they kind of move on. Usually they all kind of move on to the next show. I kind of get brought along with them as well. So if I'm working on like New Girl, for example, and then Speechless comes up, that group of people kind of moved along. And so I kind of move along with them. It doesn't always happen that way, but it's usually once you're into the system, it's a lot easier to kind of follow along with other producers. The studio relationship is very important. Relationships also with I just have friends that I have a friend that works at Netflix that she was just asking me, well, what are you up to? And this was during kind of the strike. I'm like, well, there's not really anything going on. She's like, well, we have some things that are going on. And then she just put me in touch with the post-production team there. And then all of a sudden I'm working on a Netflix show. So it kind of depends, but it really, I could trace the first show that I worked on, all the way back in like 2005. I could trace the people that I met on that show to shows that I'm working on today in 2024. And it's all about that kind of keeping those connections. And even if nothing's going on, and just reaching out and saying, hey, how's everything going? I know things are kind of slow. Hopefully everything's going okay. Usually just kind of putting your name on their radar is enough to kind of keep them in mind as a client or as a vendor for them. It really is, networking. It's a big cliche, but it's really true. I've never had to go out and like give my business card to people to say, hey, if you have any work, let me know. Or like put a resume together. I've never had to do that. Working in visual effects, it's just kind of we all kind of stay together. It's a good question because I sometimes worry about that. It's like, what if I lose all my connections? What am I going to do? And then I will have to put together a resume and everything. So IMDb is my resume, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, Jeff.
Is your workflow the same for every project? Like you receive the footage and then you're like, okay, I know I need to do scene 1 through whatever. And then afterwards, like you get like some sort of export done. Like, is it the same for every project?
Every project's a little different. The flow is very similar from show to show. The post-production workflow for a TV show and a movie is pretty much the same as far as kind of the process of going through your different cuts. So you have your director's cut, producer's cut, director's cut, all those cuts. Those all kind of come in the same cadence. There's a time when you need to online the show. So it's at a certain point, you'll need to take all the footage and put it together in an online, and then that needs to go to color timing. And so all of these different milestones are fairly similar for each project. It may be compressed to go very quickly, or you may have a lot of time to do it. But the process is pretty much the same for every show that I've worked on. My workflow is pretty much the same as well when it comes to that. Every show's a little different as far as like they may send I might get a bunch of clips for one scene for 1 week, and then they'll send me another scene the next week, or they'll just send it all to me at once and be like, we need this in 3 weeks, good luck. And then I just have to figure out how to kind of piece it all together. Sometimes, I mean, technically things are a little different for each show as far as as technology changes, and the fact that I only used to work in HD, like 1080p for a long time until 4K became like a big thing. I think the biggest show that I worked on, This Is Us, which ran for forever on NBC, it was 1080p HD through the entire run of the show. And I guess they upscaled it at a certain point, but I always worked in 10. I think they shot it in HD. So that show had like a completely different workflow than my other shows, because they were starting to do 4K or 6K or even 8K and all this craziness. It just depends on the platform, and it depends on how it's being broadcast. But the workflow is pretty similar amongst everything. It's just little idiosyncrasies about different shows prefer different things, basically.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And then like, do you like, say the director or producer comes to you and they're like, okay, we need to do this shot, and they're kind of like talking you through it. Do you already know, like, do you find yourself at the level that you already know how you're gonna do it? Or is it still like, okay, step one, like I need to do this, and then like, okay, let me experiment with like this next thing?
Yeah, that is a really good question, because I would say that most of the time it doesn't matter if I've done the same type of shot 1,000 times. There will be something about the shot that is going to be different this time. And so I will need to kind of pull another tool out of my toolkit and be like, maybe this will do this. And so, yes, when I get kind of one step of the process is getting all of the footage, and then they'll ask, usually depending on who I'm working with, they'll ask me for how much is this going to cost. I'll have to actually give them a bid for it, because it's possible that they're going to other vendors to try to get the best deal. And so I'll have to go through, and just by looking at the shot, the kind of the temporary reference that I've been given, and kind of the scope of the work, I'll have to kind of estimate what I think how much it's going to cost, or how long it's going to take me to actually do it. And so that it might be like just somebody looking at a phone and it's all blue, and so I have to put a graphic in that phone. Well, I know typically that's going to take a certain amount of time, and I've done thousands of those, so I have a pretty good idea how that's going to go. But I might get the footage later, and there may not be any tracking markers on it, or it may not be in focus really well. There may be something about it that's going to take me some extra time, and like thinking about like, how can I solve this problem with this shot? Even though I've done this millions of times, how am I going to do this? And I think that is what I love most about what I do, is everything I do is a problem to solve, no matter what. I mean, I could be given 30 shots of getting rid of a zit on somebody's face. And yes, a lot of them are going to be very repetitive, but some of them are going to be really difficult. There may be a shadow going across it, or there might be different lighting environment, whatever it is, that all of a sudden now I have to figure out how to solve that problem. And it goes across all the different types of shots that I do. So I think that solving basically, it's just basic problem solving. When I look at a shot, I can say, okay, I can probably start here, do that, and do that. And that's kind of how my brain works. But you might get into it and be like, oh no, this isn't actually working. How am I going to do this? And then you kind of have to find a creative way to make something work. Well, now I figured that out. I can put that away in my tool chest and be like, well, next time I have a shot like that doesn't have any tracking markers, or it has too many tracking markers, or whatever it is, I know I can bring that out. And I remember working on that shot, and here's what I did for that. And by solving all those different problems, that's how you kind of learn how to do all of the different things that kind of come across. And I think that applies to just about everything that you do. But I think it's the thing that gets me most excited about what I do is whenever I take a look at some shots and be like, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work, but I know how to approach it based on kind of the basic skills that I have. And then the fun is just trying to figure out how to make it actually work.
Is there ever a time where you work on a project and then it airs and you notice that there's stuff in there that you could have done that was never brought to your attention?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I think the worst part of my job is the fact that I can't watch anything without turning my visual effects artist brain off. It's either I'm watching something and I'm trying to figure out how something was done, or I'm like, oh my God, all this car, like driving footage that they have is they did it, they didn't, the camera's not shaking enough, it looks fake. Like, this is all the things that are kind of going through my head. And so I can't turn that off. And a lot of times I'll watch a show that I've worked on specifically, and like, we've fixed a lot of different things. I'm like, hey, I fixed that. I got rid of the palm tree back there, where it takes place in Kentucky. There were palm trees everywhere. I got rid of all the palm trees. Isn't that cool? And then, like, the next shot, there will be a big palm tree on another shot that they just missed. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And that happens all the time as well. But I can't turn that part of my brain off. I think once you get into any kind of filmmaking or storytelling, and you know how the sausage is made, you can't turn that off anymore. And it's just kind of a nature of the beast. I think that the best movies, the best TV shows that I've seen are ones where I'm not thinking about those things, because the story has kind of taken me, it hasn't taken me out of it. I'm actually kind of invested in the story and not trying to figure out like how Christopher Nolan made the big explosion in that movie, which he says there wasn't any visual effects, or they did it all in camera, or a lot of it in camera. That's bull. Same with like Dune as well. The Dune, that guy, it's a good movie, but there's a lot of visual effects in that movie. But yeah, it's a good question because it's tough.
I know you don't like own the footage, like whenever you're sent it, but when you deliver the footage, are you also delivering the project file? Or is that something that you own as like the contractor?
Oh, that's really good question. Depends on the studio and or the production company that I'm working for. I don't own the intellectual property to anything that I make. That is still their intellectual property. My project files, technically, I guess, are my project files, but if they wanted them, they could have them. It's not something that, since it's their project and it's their footage, I don't really own the means to, I can't keep them from seeing any of that sort of thing. There are certain studios where they want me to provide them everything, but like basically archive onto a drive at the end of a show, everything that I've done, everything that I've created. And that's and basically I just take my folders and just put it on the drive. That's more just for their archive purposes, so that they have a copy of it in case they needed to go back and do it and fix something. One good example of that is Sony Pictures Television, for Breaking Bad. They did when Better Call Saul came out, they did a kind of a 4K up conversion of Better Call Saul or of Breaking Bad, and they went back to the original files and had to redo a lot of the visual effects because once they were kind of up converted to 4K, it all looked kind of really bad. And so they had to redo a lot of stuff. And the problem was, it was such a long time ago that nobody had any of the original files because they didn't keep copies of those things. So they actually had to redo a lot of the visual effects in Breaking Bad so that they would look good in 4K. So now they have a policy in place where I provide them basically all my project files on a hard drive at the very end, just in case we need to go back and do something later. But we've never really had to do that. But that's a good question because, yeah, intellectual property. I mean, I technically, things that I've created, I guess, for myself, I would technically own. But if it's for a company that I'm being actually contracted to work for, they own all of that. So they can have it if they want it.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Do you specialize like in one software or is it multiple? And then like, I guess if you're using multiple, is there one that's better for certain things than the other? Like you're like, oh, I know, like, I don't know, like Blender or something like that would be best for this, just to get this little sequence out.
Yeah, great question. I work primarily in Adobe After Effects. There's a lot of different for compositing, for visual effects compositing specifically. There's a lot of different software, and the biggest kind of most popular is Nuke, Nuke. They are used by just about every visual effects studio imaginable. It's also it's a little bit harder to learn, and it works in a completely different way than anything that Adobe makes. Adobe makes things, if you've ever used Photoshop or even Premiere or whatever it is, they like to work in layers. So you have different layers in your timeline. Nuke, which is kind of the standard visual effects software, it uses kind of a node system where it's like different trees and pipes, things that are connected to each other. And it's just a different way of working. It doesn't mean it's better than working in After Effects or Nuke. Just there are just different reasons to use Nuke over After Effects for certain things. I learned After Effects from the very, very beginning. And so I use After Effects for just about everything that I do. There's certain software outside of After Effects that I use. I don't do a lot of 3D work. So when it comes to 3D, there's Cinema 4D, Blender, Maya, Houdini, all those types of software. I don't touch any of that because 3D stuff makes my brain hurt a little bit because it involves a lot of math, and I didn't take math in college, so I don't know how to do any of that. So take a math class. I never did. I had the option of not taking math, which was amazing, and I didn't. But now I don't know how to do any of the 3D stuff. But there are those packages all have pros and cons to them as well. Blender is completely free. So you can download Blender and you can learn how to create 3D scenes and objects completely for free, and it's amazing. Cinema 4D costs a lot of money. Maya costs a lot more money than Cinema 4D. So there are pros and cons to it. With After Effects, and sometimes I talk to friends that work in visual effects who only use Nuke for everything that they do. They can't believe I'm doing what I'm doing in After Effects. And I'm like, hey, it's After Effects. It's great. You pay $50 a month and you get access to all of Adobe stuff. Though they've gotten into some hot water recently about their subscription stuff, which is a little, that and AI is AI is a whole other topic, but they've gotten a little bit kind of in some people don't like them as much as they used to, but I love them. After Effects is really easy to learn, but it's also extremely powerful once you learn all the what all the little buttons do. So yes, After Effects is what I do primarily.
So speaking about AI, has that negatively or positively impacted your career in visual effects?
Boy, you could ask me that question next week and I might have a different answer. Who knows, right? AI changes constantly. Like what AI is capable of doing constantly changes week by week by week. For me, somebody said this, and I don't take credit for it, but the person or AI is not going to replace your job. The person who knows how to use AI is going to replace your job. And I think that kind of goes, it kind of goes with every way of using AI. I mean, right now we can use it to write an entire paper or an email if we wanted to, but is it going to be the best paper or best email that you can write? No, you're still going to have to tweak it and perfect it. As a tool, AI is, I think, great, because there are a lot of things that I do, especially in if anybody's used Adobe, what am I thinking of? Photoshop's generative fill function, where you can literally just select something and say, I want a butterfly to be here, and it'll just put a butterfly there. Or you could just select something and delete it, and it'll fill in the background. That has saved me hours and hours of time. I mean, I learned how to, by hand, how to paint things out in Photoshop. Now I can just select it and get rid of it. So that as a tool is amazing. Is it perfect every single time? Absolutely not. So I still need to have the skill to know what looks good, what doesn't look good, how I can fix it if I need to fix it. But I still have that as a new tool that I have. I think that, once when everybody was writing screenplays on a typewriter, and then they came out with like Final Draft, there were a lot of people that were like, why would you need a computer to help you write a screenplay? I know perfectly well how to do this in a typewriter. It's just a tool that I think that if you know how to use it, it's going to help you immensely in the job that you do. Now, there are a lot of concerns about like intellectual property, as we were talking about it earlier. Adobe's gotten into hot water about it. All of the kind of generative image creation stuff has gotten into some hot water. There's literally today, there's an article about Runway ML, which is a video creation like AI thing where you can type in like, I want to sit a bustling city with red and blue cars, and it'll just create a video of it. Well, they just found out that they've been scraping YouTube and all of the YouTube videos that are freely available on the internet. They've been using that as their kind of the way that they're training their AI models. So there's a lot of kind of it right now. It's like I said, ask me next week and I might have a completely different opinion about it. I'm not concerned about it as far as like my job. Until they're able to be like, select something in a scene and say, get rid of, blur everybody's face or get rid of all the license plates or whatever it is, and it looks perfect. Until that day, I'm not quite worried about it. But it's a great tool, but it's something that we kind of have to navigate around a little bit, because again, it's changing so much all the time. I mean, all the Adobe uses their own content. They say that they're using their own content to train these AI models. So anything that I create in the Adobe program, it's all licensed images. So that gives me a little bit of I feel a little bit better about that. But who knows where all this is going to go? Next year, we could be in a completely different land of craziness with AI. Yeah.
Do you work with color correction and color grading? Because I noticed your display or your camera, it looks amazing. Like the colors are popping.
Oh, thank you. I spent a lot of time figuring out like this is like Tetris. Here's some Star Wars stuff. My part of the process is right before color correction and color timing and color grading. So I don't do a bunch of it, but I have to understand the process, because what I'm doing, I usually when they send me footage, it's usually very flat log footage that looks, there's no contrast to it. So I need to understand at the end of this process that I'm doing, what is this supposed to look like once it gets through color timing and color correction. So I need to understand those concepts. I don't do it. I usually get the information of how to make the shot look the way it needs to look from editorial team and the post-production facility. So I don't really dabble in a lot of that, but I do have to kind of understand what is going to happen in all the steps of the process, so that if I needed to make adjustments, or if whatever I'm adding to a shot or changing the color of something, I need to understand how that's going to work down the pipeline. So it's more of an understanding. I think if I was to kind of change careers, I would love to get into that sort of thing, because there's you can change the entire mood, and you have such creative control over just by changing the color of a scene, which is amazing. I mean, it's such a cool thing to think about. But yeah, it's kind of kind of goes with everything, and as part of the process is having a general understanding of how it works is really the key to it. I don't need to be an expert in it, but I need to understand that if I do this, the colorist is going to see that they need to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
I'm just curious, how did you get your display to look like, or the room and everything to look like that on screen? Is it just?
Well, this one right here?
What color is his computer setup right there?
I know, but
Yeah, this is this is a wave for it's a video what am I trying to think? It's video scopes that it's a program that I use on one of my monitors. I double it up. I have two monitors here, and I double it up whenever I'm doing zooms, so it looks really cool. But I have video scopes on one of my monitors so that I can see kind of what's going on. And then all of the rest of all of this is just kind of, I've got track lighting up here, and it's just hue light bulbs. And that's like a big Tetris thing. And all of these lights are just coming from, there's lights over here that are kind of bouncing on the thing. It's, I teach remotely every once in a while, so I had to make sure that my background looked good, because I get bummed out when Zoom backgrounds don't look all that good. So you guys look great though. The background here is amazing.
It's real life.
That's real life. This is real.
Toward and then Joe.
Is there any like VFX editing that you really love doing or you really like loathe doing?
Is it any type of shot that I've worked on or things like that? Yes. When it comes to getting rid of reflections on things, say you have you're looking through, say the camera is passing through by a window. You're looking through a window inside a building, and the camera's passing kind of parallel to the window. Usually what will happen is you can see the camera in the reflection. You've probably seen it a lot. You'll notice it now once you watch anything. But that reflection in the window, if I'm asked to get rid of it, that means that everything beyond that reflection has to be completely recreated, because that reflection is on top of something that's basically semi-transparent. And that means that everything beyond that has to be completely erased and recreated. And if it's people walking around and doing a lot of stuff, sometimes I will say, I cannot do this, because it's like almost, it would take me a week just to get rid of reflections. Reflections are the worst. They are the worst thing ever. I've started things that I actually love doing. I've started doing a lot of beauty work, which in our industry basically means making people look better. But I've gotten really, I started working on This Is Us. I did de-aging for This Is Us. So all of the characters, well, not all of the characters, some of the characters, we went back and forth in time with some of the characters. So I was asked to kind of de-age them like 10 or 15 years. So basically just getting rid of a lot of wrinkles. And through that process, I did several seasons of just de-aging. I started getting into a lot more beauty work, which basically is just kind of digital makeup for actors. And you'd be surprised how much stuff that you see where somebody has gone through and touched up somebody's face like on every shot. And I'd love doing that, because there's a balance between making him look like really smooth and fake and completely real, but getting rid of all of like the big lines on their face and make them look a little bit better. So digital makeup, beauty work, that's the type of stuff that I'm really, really enjoying right now. But reflections, and I don't know, Brenda, if you remember sending me any reflection stuff, it was the worst.
No, oh, noted, noted. And I will make sure and not send you, hey, Mike. Yes, it
Yeah,
is true.
yeah.
It's true. I mean, yes, reflection is a very big uh point in what we do. Yes, cameras, you'll like you were saying, like in windows, or a lot of times on cars.
Yes, yes, that too.
The car. And so we're constantly on our team looking for that reflection of the camera of the crew that's reflected on the car door or the
Yeah.
side of. So yes, yeah, that's always something, like you said, like turning that off is really hard because I'm always
It's
looking at
tough.
reflections. Yes. Yeah, always looking at reflections. And then also, I had mentioned it to the class, the actors that wear glasses and those,
Hmm.
like they have the anti-reflective lenses.
Yeah.
Really, the
The
amount of time you
the
had to take stuff out.
yeah, the green and purple spots in glasses are, they say they're anti-reflective, but what that means is for normal people looking at them, it's not as reflective, but on camera, it makes it a whole lot worse sometimes. And you get green and purple and different colors in their glasses. I worked on a Disney Channel show where one character had these glasses, and I think I would spend weeks getting rid of just green dots all in their glasses. And it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Or you could be on like New Girl, where she didn't wear any lenses in her glasses.
Mhm.
So we didn't have to worry about that. Anyway.
No, there's an accessory. That's true.
What was outside of your own work, what movie or TV show do you like the most for its visual effects?
Oh. Outside of my work. Well, then if it's outside of my work, it's not really good, obviously. No. That's a really good question. I think the obvious ones are like Game of Thrones and in the new House of the Dragon, or whatever it's called now. I love that show. I think what's really interesting, the technology that has kind of gone into a lot of the TV Star Wars stuff, with like, starting with the Mandalorian and being on LED sound stages. It was really cool at the time, and then we got really tired of it. Because everybody started to recognize the fact that, oh, they're just standing around in a fake LED soundstage, and then they had to actually go back outside and do stuff outside. But that technology is kind of changing the way that filmmaking's done. I mean, it really has kind of revolutionized a lot of things, and they're getting a lot better at using that kind of sound LED soundstage type technology, virtual production type stuff. So a lot of that, which is not necessarily, it's not very flashy, but it's something that's very technical and very hard to achieve well. And when I know that a show or a movie has been using that technology in a really good way, I think it's very impressive. I think a lot of the Apple TV, I just watched Dark Matter on Apple TV. I don't know if anybody's seen that yet. It's a good show. And visual effects wise, there's not a whole lot of like jump out at you type of visual effects like Game of Thrones, but there's a lot of very invisible type of visual effects that are done really well that you would never know that they're doing. And on that show, there's I won't get into spoilers, but there's a lot of it's kind of like time travel-y feeling. And if you've ever seen like Back to the Future and you have two Martys in one scene, there was like, they had to do a lot of crazy stuff to make that happen. Nowadays, it's a lot easier, but it still can feel gimmicky. And I think on that show, they've done a really, really good job for that. Ted Lasso too, which another Apple TV show where, all the when they're playing actual soccer, the stadiums are completely fake, basically. All the people in those stadiums are completely fake, and it looks really good. So those are, it's a really, yeah, I've never thought about anybody else's visual effects. I only think about myself. But yeah, those are some good ones. Game of Thrones is great though. I think it's amazing. Anyway.
Do you find yourself like upgrading like gear as much? Like I feel like as a photographer and videographer, like it's always like the newest camera, the newest lens, but then For you, is it like, oh, the newest software or upgrade or software or even like PC parts? I don't know if you use PC or Mac, but
Yeah. It's been it's changed a little bit. I used to be, for my work, I would only be PC because I was able to upgrade very quickly. Like a new video card would come out and I would upgrade the video card. Then Apple came out with a lot of with their own silicone whatever they call it, chips, silicon chips, the M2s, M3s, etc. And then they came out with they had a Mac Pro, and then they came out with the Mac Studio, and I got the Mac Studio it's almost a year and a half ago, I guess it is. And that thing, it's about this big, and it was faster than the PC that I spent several $1,000s to build, and I can literally unplug it and bring it with me anywhere that I want. So I do upgrade as much as I can. The Mac stuff, since now I'm kind of back in the Mac world, they don't upgrade the way I want to upgrade. Like, they haven't upgraded that Mac Studio in forever. Like, come on, guys, let's get some M3 chips in there. But we kind of have plateaued a little bit when it comes to throwing a really, really beefy PC at something. The gains that you get each year is starting to kind of slow down a little bit. Now, once we get into AI stuff, you want to speed up some AI type stuff, then you're going to need like beefier video cards and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I have a whole cabinet back there of cameras that, like, every time there was a new Canon camera, I would buy it, and then now it's all in this drawer because I don't use it as much anymore. And same kind of goes for computer equipment for visual effects. The capabilities of just a laptop, just a pretty standard MacBook Pro, can do just about. I mean, if I got the M3 MacBook Pro now, it would be almost as fast as my Mac Studio. So it's gotten kind of crazy how good it all that stuff is. So haven't had to upgrade hardware in a long time. Software, Adobe does a pretty good job of updating their software a lot, especially with all the AI stuff. So whenever there's an update, I'm like, yes, update. And then sometimes it breaks, and then I have to be like, no, go back. But I like to update as much as possible.
Gotcha.
so then as like are you the only one in your business? Like the company that you own, is it just you or is it multiple people?
Yeah, for at this moment it is. Yeah, the pandemic kind of, before the pandemic, I had a couple of artists that work with me in an office, and then pandemic hit, and then we weren't doing anything, so I had to lay them off. And then I moved to a new house, and then I had a big office space that I could use. So I've just been working myself basically since 2020. And yeah.
I was gonna ask if, like, as a business owner, like, are you budgeting for new equipment every year? Like, is that something like on your expenses, like, okay, I know like this new card from NVIDIA is coming out in November, like, I need to make sure that I put something away, so as soon as that's out or pre-orders, like, I can just buy it right away?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, budgeting, especially for a business that relies on equipment like that. I mean, most of my expenses are related to software. Software costs a lot. I mean, I pay for some software that costs thousands of dollars a year that I have to have. And then hardware as well. There's kind of an annual cadence to a lot of that stuff. So I know that come November, I'm going to have to re-up the subscription to a certain piece of software, or like you said, the new MacBooks are coming out, or the new Mac Studios coming out, whatever it is. I need to put aside some money for that. And yeah, that's a really important part of it, because since I like to have the new stuff, I need to prepare for it, for sure.
How do you determine what you're gonna charge someone who's trying to give you like a list of shots to do?
Great question. And Brenda, you can close your ears on this.
Oh, wow.
It's completely arbitrary. No. No, I have a system where I charge based on the amount of hours it takes me to complete a shot. So I have kind of like an hourly rate, and that's kind of how a lot of studios work. They'll have a set hourly rate for certain things. Sometimes they'll have like, well, if this is a putting a screen on a computer, it's going to cost X amount of money. They just charge that specific amount. I like to charge based on the actual time it's going to take for me to actually to do the work. And I try to be as transparent as possible to clients about that. So a lot of times I will, instead of a bid saying like, this is all going to cost you, $5,000, I will say, I think based on what you sent me, it's going to cost $5,000, but a lot of this I might be able to do this section a lot quicker. So I might be able to save some time and money on this little bit of work. But I know that this shot might be really complicated. So I'm going to let you know if this is going to be like really, really, really complicated. And I might need to work a little bit more than the 10 hours that I've estimated. And that's a little different than other studios work. But a lot of I charge quite a bit less than a lot of the big studios. So a lot of clients like the kind of the transparency of that's going to take me 2 hours to work on that shot. I know that this is a 2-hour shot, and they go somewhere else and they're charging them the equivalent of what I would charge for like 8 hours, and I think that's ridiculous. So I end up getting more work because of that. Could I be charging more? Probably. I could probably be charging more, but I also I want to be as honest and transparent as possible about what I'm charging. So I keep that my hourly rate is this, and I think this is how much time it's actually going to take me to do that shot.
You had talked about taking on too many projects, and our guest speaker from Tuesday had talked about always working on something or finishing something. And I just want to know, like, what is your level? Like, what is a good plan that you follow so you don't get overwhelmed?
Yeah, it depends. It really depends. Each show is a little different. Last season on Only Murders, I was doing about 100 shots per episode, and that was a lot. So I couldn't take on another 3 or 4 shows in addition to that. This season, I'm doing about half that. I'm doing about 40 to 50 shots on Only Murders. And so I'm able to work on another show and be like, hey, I can, they'll send me a lot of stuff and they're like, can you do all of this? I'm like, yeah, I actually have some time to do everything that you sent me. So it depends. It depends. There was one pilot season. I don't know. Pilot season is not really a thing anymore, but it usually was in like around February, March when they were doing all the pilots, and there was like a big just like fire hose of shows being created. They don't really do that much anymore, but when that happened, I would be working on multiple shows at once, maybe up to 7 or 8 shows at once, but I wasn't doing wasn't necessarily doing a whole bunch on one show and a whole bunch on another show. It was just a lot of little things on a lot of shows. So I was able to do like 7 or 8 shows, I think, at one point. And I had other artists working with me that I could kind of spread things out a little bit. But yeah, it kind of depends. If I have one show that needs to do like 300 beauty shots per episode, well, I can't take on any other work. This is what I'm doing for the next 3 months or whatever. So yeah. It's tough.
As like I guess as a business owner and like VFX artist, do you still have any major goals for yourself? Like I know like obviously you've accomplished a lot, you've worked on lots of TV shows and stuff like that, but is there something that you're like I guess is a goal for you? Like do you still have like that kind of like not endpoint, but like, okay, this is like the top of the top. Like if someone sends this to me, like for a full movie or a TV show, like I know I'm happy for it. I'm excited for it.
No, I've lived every dream. This is it. No, I think that I'm in a really good place. I'm very comfortable where I am. I like to challenge myself a lot. So you start to, with anything, you start to kind of get if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you're not challenging yourself, things just kind of slow down, and it doesn't feel really good. So I like to try to take on work that is a little bit more complicated. Every year I take on something a little bit more complex, a little bit more, maybe I'm going to get into 3D a little bit and try to do some 3D stuff, even though it involves math. Those challenges that I kind of put for myself each year is the goals that I'm trying to reach. I think my ultimate goal, I think, would be to do everything that I'm doing right now on the beach in Hawaii, and I'm working towards that goal. And it's gotten a lot easier to do that, by the way. But I think really the goal is to keep myself interested in what I'm doing, and the way I'm doing that is to challenge myself. And I've started teaching and doing those sorts of things, trying to branch out a little bit. But those are the kinds of goals that I have, is the challenges. Yeah.
But Mike, do you think, I mean, we've certainly worked on a lot of projects and been in the industry for a while. For the students now who we all hope to work for, and may we be so lucky that they hire us to work on their projects.
Absolutely.
Yes, may we be so lucky once they definitely have where they reach their goals. Also, do you feel like, what advice do you have for like networking, or do you think going to Los Angeles or Atlanta, or what do you, like someone that's not in Los Angeles, like what advice would you give?
Yeah. This is something, another thing that changes all the time. The fact that we can have this conversation the way we're having this conversation, and you didn't have to fly me out to Texas, which would have been awesome too. Just is a good example of the fact that we're able to kind of work wherever we want, almost. And I know a lot of visual effects studios that are hiring a lot of people that are working remotely. There are a lot of post-production offices on TV shows that I work on that don't have an actual post-production office. They're all at home. And that's for somebody that, I kind of like to be in an office, a separate place from my house. So I have like a separate office from my house. It's a little bit different, but the fact that we're able to do that has opened up the possibilities and the opportunities for everyone. And when I graduated college, I had to move to LA because either New York or LA, those were like the two options. New York was too crazy for me, so I moved to LA. And because that was the only way you could get into this business, was to work, to be here, to actually work. Now you don't necessarily need to do that, especially in post-production, where a lot of it is technical and it's on the computer. You can be basically anywhere. But also the problem with that is it makes it harder to get yourself out there and be known to people, and like actually network with people. I think that there have been a lot of amazing cases where I've seen people find visual effects artists or other storytellers just through the work that they've posted online. Demo reels that they've put together, fun short little projects that they put together. A perfect example is J.J. Abrams found one of his visual effects artists based on YouTube tutorials that he used to do. J.J. Abrams was literally just like going through YouTube one day, and he was watching these tutorials, and he reached out to this guy, and can you come work on Star Trek and create the main title for Star Trek? And he's like, yes. And that was like 15 years ago. The opportunity to be seen online is becoming more and more prevalent, I think. But there's a huge sea of people that are doing kind of the same thing. And I think the way to kind of get yourself out there and in front of people is to do as much as possible, and play as much as possible, and post it as much as possible, and spread it to as many of your friends and people that you know as possible. Because the only way that people are going to see it is if it gets passed around and it becomes, it's something to be seen, somebody that you get a link, or you see it in your Twitter or X feed or whatever you use, or you post a short film on TikTok, or a little demo reel of a cool animated thing that you did in Blender on TikTok. And it just, and the more you do that, and it gains kind of this viralism, whatever the word is, the more people are going to learn who you are, and your presence is going to your reputation is going to grow from that. If you do come to LA or New York, or you move to Atlanta or Vancouver, or all these kind of production hotspots now, which has kind of expanded quite a bit outside of just Los Angeles, my biggest suggestion is keeping an open mind about what you want to, like, what part of the business you want to get into. When I moved to LA, like I said, I wanted to be on set, and that was all I wanted to do. I was like, I almost didn't take the post-production assistant job because I thought that wasn't something I really wanted to do. But I didn't, since I hadn't done it before, I didn't know. So I actually did it, and I ended up realizing, oh my God, this is actually exactly where I want to be. And if I hadn't kept that open mind, I would not be doing what I'm doing now, talking to you right now. And so keeping an open mind, say, you know, it's sometimes people say, like, don't say no to anything. I think that's a little much, but take opportunities that come your way, even if it doesn't fit exactly into the box that you have created as like your idea of what you want to do, because those opportunities can kind of open your mind or kind of expose you to something that you didn't realize. Especially with in post-production specifically, there are so many different types of jobs in post-production that I don't even know about. And I've worked in post-production for a long time, and I discover that, oh my God, this is a job that somebody could do, and they get paid money to do this. So exploring that, keeping an open mind, and doing as much as creating as much as possible and getting it out there, even if it doesn't have to be Oscar worthy or Emmy worthy or whatever. Just getting it out there, showing your friends, showing people, creating your network and expanding your network with the content that you're creating will help you get to that next level of a professional job. I think that's kind of the nature of the way it is now. My answer would have been different probably 5 or 10 years ago. It would have been completely different once I moved out here, when I was literally going to like socials and alumni events and things just to meet people. Now it's all, we can kind of do that online. And even though it is a very vast space to do it, there are ways to kind of put yourself out there and get seen. So navigating it's tough, but once the network forms, it's kind of like it's a virus. It'll keep going and growing and growing. And it'll help you a lot.
I agree. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Mike, so much for taking the time to talk to us.
You're very welcome.
I learned, I say this to every speaker. I know we've known each other for a long time, and I always learn something new. Always.
Oh,
always.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, this was great, and everybody had amazing questions. I don't know what you did to them you fed them all of these questions.
It's all them, really. I learned from them. Yeah, no, they're fantastic. Thank you,
Well, this
Mike,
was
so
awesome.
much. I appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome, and good luck to everybody. Break a leg or whatever they say these days. This industry is since it changes so much from day to day. I think that's what makes it one of the most interesting industries to want to be a part of. And storytelling is storytelling. It's telling a story. Story is very, very basic, and it's going to be the same throughout time. But the way we do it completely changes, and you guys are right at the forefront of it. And so I'm excited for all of you to be a part of it, and I can't wait for you to contact me to work on your film. That'll be great.
Agreed. I can't wait either. All right. Thank you so much, Mike.
Cool. See you guys. Bye-bye.